The evolution is as shattering as modern warfare would be to the veteran of the Civil War. Drugs and the battle over distribution rights is one reason for the change. There is a recklessness in today's gang wars that make even the prohibition battles of the 1920s pale by comparison. There were, in those days at least, and by the direction of crime bosses, some ground rules. Civilian deaths were to be avoided. You tried not to kill law enforcement officers. It is worse, of course, in some places than others. Among the worst of all is Los Angeles.
18.414, switch to 5.
We'll be in the area, clean 40.
Roger, I just want to make sure we have the house secured and we'll make an entry.
Right now, this community is in a state of siege, too many guns on the street, and they have to be suppressed.
Put your head down, what are you looking at? Put your head down!
Gangs have taken over. They run it, and they run it through fear.
There are 70,000 gang members in Los Angeles County. Out of that, perhaps about 10,000 are hardcore. Hardcore means that they'll kill you as soon as look at you.
The hardcore gang member, he's a sociopath. He's an individual that you can't do anything with. He has no conscience, nothing except to make money through the sale of narcotics.
They're out there dealing dope, so they're fighting over that. They're fighting over territory. They're fighting over virtually anything. Whose graffiti goes on this wall? Whose neighborhood is that? Long-time wars that have been going on over things that people can't even remember anymore.
Most of them that are doing these things are kids that do not feel that they are worth anything.
If you didn't play basketball or football, there's nothing to do but go home and shoot dice and get high or get drunk. But now with cocaine, you have something, a way to make money. And with cocaine, the ugliest person in the world, with a second-grade education, is the king, as long as he has cocaine.
They drop out of school. We don't do anything to bring them back into school. They go on the streets. They see others making a great deal of money, either in drugs or prostitution or a whole variety of criminal activities, and they say, that's the way to go for me.
They not only become users, they become sellers, and they become distributors. And they now are involved so heavily, it's just a total marriage.
You know, people say crime doesn't pay, but it's worth it in a sense. If you can make, say, $15,000, $16,000 in one day, you just have to be smart about it or use your sense.
A kid is not going to go to junior high school every day and flip hamburgers at Mickey D's when he can stand on a corner and make anywhere from $100 to $300 a day selling rock.
Where do you live, Foot?
80th and...
Put your hands down. Where? Go there.
I stopped this kid maybe twice a week, every week for 4 weeks. He was in a known narcotic location. I watched him do a deal down the street. But by the time I got there, I could find no narcotics, so needless to say, I couldn't arrest him. But every time during the search, I'd find $600 or $700 on his pocket, every single time.
When they kill someone, they display a really remarkable lack of care or concern about that. Just no big thing. You know, they laugh and joke and what the hell. Life's, you know, the old saying, life's cheap. And life is cheap. I'll tell you, it's very cheap. It's damn near free, you know, in some parts of the city.
I feel like a prisoner on the streets. I mean, I feel like I got to watch my back or beware of somebody trying to take my money or pull a gun on me or something.
People are scared to walk the streets. They're scared to sit on their porch. They can't even enjoy being at home by themselves.
All those people that were killed last year, 387, half of them were innocent bystanders. It's not just gangs shooting each other up, but they're shooting each other up and they're killing an awful lot of innocent bystanders.
In my opinion, you and I can be standing out talking, just talking, and a car is subject to drive by and blow us away.
And out of all the hundreds of people that was there, he was the only one that got shot. And not shot and hurt, but shot and killed.
This isn't West Side Story. This isn't a bunch of kids going around with zip guns. It's a bunch of sociopathic killers who have Uzi machine guns and MAC-10 machine guns.
They don't have the Saturday night specials anymore. I mean, they've got the Rolls Royce of the weapons now. some fully automatic jobs, so forth and so on.
In many cases, in many of these gangs, their involvement in narcotics and the sophisticated way in which they're distributing dope, my view is that we're looking at budding organized crime. No question about it.
They are as effective as any organized gang or mafia, as you want to call it. I would say they're probably more effective.
We have a war. We are going to be successful. Whatever it takes, we will do it.
The police chief has put 1,000 additional police officers on the street. I'm sure it's made a dent, but even with the police chief riding around in the car, they were still shooting and killing each other out there.
If we can break the narcotic gang connection, if we can really break up the organized aspects of the gangs, disassemble them, make it a one-on-one situation where they're not very organized, I think we can do a great deal in reducing the violence.
There's an incredible lack of real appreciation for the level of violence that these people are capable of.
We've got a lot of anger out there, and we can point the fingers, but we've got kids that have grown up accustomed to this type of life, and now it's just coming to a head.
They can catch you, but they can't stop you. It only slows you down. Just slows you down.
When we come back, we'll talk with the man responsible for the tough crackdown on Los Angeles gangs, Los Angeles Police Chief Daryl Gates, and with Benny Swans, a specialist in working with gang members to make their lives more productive and a former gang member himself.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Sominex.
What battle plans do the candidates have to fight them? Hear from them all and decide for yourself. Monday on ABC's World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Daryl Gates has been chief of police for the city of Los Angeles for the past 10 years and is the person responsible for the sweeps that have led to the arrests of hundreds of suspected gang members in recent months. He joins us now in our Los Angeles bureau. Benny Swans, who's with us from our Philadelphia bureau, is himself a former member of Philadelphia's Cedar Avenue gang. He is head of the city's Crisis Intervention Network, which works with gang members and their families in a program aimed at reducing gang violence. Over the past week or so, Chief Gates, when the campaign has really been intensified, how many arrests have you made?
We've made, well, in the last month, we've made about 3,000 arrests. Just on the last weekend, we made 1,400.
And of those, let's take the last weekend, of that 1,400, how many were back on the street on Monday?
Well, most of them go back on the street, although several were arrested for felonies. They probably are still in jail, but we do have a bail system in the United States, and they are certainly free to take advantage of that, and they do.
Let me just point out, and you're fully aware of the criticism, ACLU, NAACP, making the point that in just kind of sweeping people up in these neighborhoods without any particular cause with individuals and sweeping them up almost as a group, you are in fact violating their civil rights simply by arresting them that way rather than doing it one by one on the basis of a particular suspicion of a crime having been committed.
Well, first of all, that's total nonsense. We must have the elements of a crime, the elements to make the arrest, reasonable cause to make that arrest, and we do have that before we make the arrest. The ACLU, the NAACP, in this instance, are not productive or not positive in their approach to what we are attempting to do. You can't, the civil rights of many, many citizens in the city of Los Angeles are being violated every single day by these gangs, and the ACLU doesn't pay any attention to that.
Benny Swans, we heard one of those gang members a moment ago in the tape piece say, it's not going to stop it, this kind of a roundup. It'll slow it down for a while, but it's not going to stop it. Do you agree with that?
I think the kid's probably right. You can put more police in the neighborhood, you can make more arrests. It's never been proven that police alone is going to solve the gang problem. I met with Chief Gates in 1981 in Los Angeles to work on a community youth service gang project. Clearly, if we're going to impact on gangs, it's going to take a collective effort, schools, recreation centers, police, and neighborhoods. I'm afraid that the sweeps may bring immediate gratification to the public, suggesting that there's progress, but long-term poor relationships between the neighborhoods and the police department. Clearly, someone's going to be overzealous, and an innocent victim is going to get killed. I think we need to reassess what we're doing. We've been successful in Philadelphia. I think we can be successful in other parts of the country through a collective working mechanism.
Now, when you talk about things like, networking programs, using the schools, using the families, that almost sounds, and forgive me for saying it, but it almost sounds whimsical when one looks at the kinds of pictures that we've just been seeing out there in Los Angeles, where you have young men who are armed with Uzis, with AK-47s, with M16s. Are you really going to be able to handle that? Is it still at a point where you can handle that through family intervention?
Ted, it would be a terrible error in judgment for us to conclude that every gang member in Los Angeles carries an AK-47 or an Uzi. But that simply is not the case. There are two elements of gangs that you're dealing with. Clearly, the Jamaican drug gangs is quite different from the territorial gangs. They both have the potential to be violent. One you have an opportunity to interact with and impact on in terms of the territorial groups, and in terms of the Jamaican groups such as that other, you needed law enforcement. We look at the drug problem in three arenas. One talks about a legislative issue in terms of stopping importation of drugs, and clearly it does not appear as though the United States has their hands completely clear in that regard. Government is in fact assisting in trafficking drugs in this country. Secondly,
whoa. Let me stop you there. What do you mean the government's assisting in trafficking drugs into this country?
Somebody's turning their back for cocaine to have come in this country and been reduced in price so significantly. At one point, cocaine was clearly out of the reach for the black and Hispanic communities. Now, all of a sudden, it's being inundated with cocaine. Who's putting this cocaine in here? Black folks don't manufacture cocaine, don't traffic cocaine. Somebody's bringing it in for them to sell. It cannot be done without government being involved. I believe that CNN News also covered that, and people indicated that government, in fact, turned its back. So these cocaines could be brought in this country and be distributed in local neighborhoods. Something's wrong, we've got to deal with that.
All right, Chief Gates, why don't you address that point for a moment, then we'll get back to the broader issue.
Well, I don't want to say everything he said was nonsense, but a great deal of it was nonsense. In the city of Los Angeles alone, Los Angeles Police Department last year seized over 7 tons of cocaine. Most of that came in from Colombia through Mexico. It's pouring in. All you have to do is go to Colombia, as the Attorney General has.
Well, I mean, the two of you making the same point about the quantity that's pouring in.
There's no question about it, but I'm saying the government
is suggesting that that's in part because some members of the government are turning their back.
Well, that's nonsense. The people who are attempting to enforce are doing it with great zealousness. There's no one in the government that is turning their back on it. They're trying very hard. We're not doing enough, I will admit that.
We should
We're not doing enough at all.
I'll tell you what, gentlemen, let's take a break because we have another guest I want to bring into this mix. A number of cities have had a particular problem in dealing with local gangs which have been distributing drugs for international traffickers. When we come back, we'll be joined by a former prosecutor who's worked specifically on that problem, Joseph diGenova, former U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. Attorney for the District of Columbia from 1983 until just last month. While in office, diGenova was known for stepping up attacks against illegal drug traffickers. Let's pick up, Mr. diGenova, on a couple of points that Mr. Swan's made a moment ago. Point number one, the level of cocaine that's been coming into this country over the last year or so. My understanding is that the price of a kilo of cocaine has gone down from about $60,000 to about $10,000. Seems to confirm at least this much of what Mr. Swans is saying, namely a whole lot more is getting in. How?
There is no question about it, Ted, that larger and larger amounts of cocaine are coming into the country. That is because more and more people are involved in consumption, more and more people are involved in the distribution network, and of course, as a result, the price of cocaine on the street has gone down as well. And of course, with the new form of cocaine, crack, it's even cheaper at about $5 a pop.
But I mean, the point he's making is, because I could add, more and more money is being spent on trying to keep it out, more and more personnel is being devoted to trying to keep it out. One would think then that the amount of cocaine coming in would decrease, but it's increasing. It does lend some credence to what Mr. Swans is saying.
Well, no, not necessarily, Ted. Mr. Swans is implying that people in law enforcement and elsewhere in government, including members of Congress, are turning their back on the problem. No, that is not the case. What is in fact the case is that enforcement is up. We're spending 3 times the amount of money that was spent at the beginning of the Reagan administration on enforcement right now. The problem is that the consumption rate is up, and this is just like any other business. Where there is a market, there will be sellers. There are large numbers of buyers in this country from all stratas of life buying these drugs, and we've got a good market in this country.
I admire you as a lawyer, but I'm not sure that your economics is that good. Usually when the number of consumers goes up chasing a dwindling product, the price goes up. What you've got here is more consumers and more product to such a degree that the price is coming down.
That is correct. That is correct.
If I could
go ahead, Mr. Swan.
Just 2 points very quickly. No one is suggesting that all of law enforcement is involved in supporting drug trafficking in this country. That would be a terrible error in judgment. And clearly I'm in support of law enforcement and work with law enforcement here in the city of Philadelphia. But someone's turning their back. Whether that's the CIA in regarding to get additional weapons to the Contras, somebody's turning their back, and consequently there's more drugs in the street.
And I'll tell you who's turning their back, Mr. Swans. It's the American people, because the American people are the problem. They are a massive consumption machine, and they are the source of this problem.
Gentlemen, let me bring it back to gangs for a moment, because Mr. Swan's made another point that I find interesting. He is saying that it is just gangs like the Jamaicans, for example, who are really focusing on the drug trafficking. I'd like to get your point of view, and that the other gangs are really just battling over turf. To what degree are these huge gangs in places like Los Angeles foot soldiers for the drug cartel?
Well, there just isn't any question about it. What's driving those gangs in Los Angeles, in Washington, D.C., in Chicago, Kansas City, Cleveland, New York, is the distribution of drugs at the street level. They don't import those drugs. They are distribution people who are functioning as the final distributioners at the end of the distribution chain, from whether it's Colombia, Italy, Pakistan, Hong Kong, for the ultimate distribution of those drugs.
Chief Gates, well, hold on just 1 second. Let me get Chief Gates in on this, and then I'll come back to you, Mr. Swans. What's your view on that?
Everyone knows about Los Angeles except me, I think. We don't have any Jamaicans in Los Angeles dealing. We have black gangs in Los Angeles. Black gangs are organized, and they are distributing coke in the city, rock cocaine. It is cheaper because they've been able to bring good quality cocaine in and then put it into a form that makes it cheaper. There's no question that more cocaine is coming into the United States than ever before. And that's not because law enforcement is turning their back, it's because we are not doing enough.
What I'm asking, though, Chief Gates, is to what degree are these people, whether they are at the end or in the middle of the distribution chain, to what degree are they, in one sense or another, foot soldiers for the international drug cartels?
Well, they are the distribution network, and they're growing in size, and they are about middle level now. They're providing... they have people at the middle level right now and doing a big job, a big business. We think that there are gangs in Los Angeles that are making about $1 million a week.
Now, Mr. Swans, go ahead and make your point, then we'll take another break.
Okay, gangs. Every ethnic group in this country has, in fact, used gangs as an entry. Number one. Secondly, the problem and the concern that I have is that when we're targeting black gangs as being multi-million-dollar involved in drugs, we're making a terrible error in judgment. There are some gangs that are involved, but they're limited. It's the exception rather than the rule. And if, in fact, we operate with sweeps, coming into a neighborhood, locking up a large number of people, it provides a short-term gratification to the public, saying something that's being done long-term is going to cause difficulty for the police to work in those neighborhoods.
All right.
I'm a supporter of the law enforcement community, but you're making a terrible error in judgment.
Gentlemen, we got to take another break, and I don't know who that was. Was Chief Gates trying to get back?
Yeah, trying.
All right, I'll come right back to you when we return. Right. We'll continue our discussion in a moment.